I introduced the Super Cab. If you remember that episode, we also got stuck climbing the hill. Definitely don't want to bore you guys with all that stuff this time. So my plan is to use a little bit of Hollywood magic to make it happen this time. Holy crap, that actually worked. That worked pretty good. So I shot that intro a little while ago. I'll show you the new axle I got, and we'll get to work. So here's the new axle, $100. It's an 05 or newer F250 or F350 D60. So we'll do a quick comparison between this axle and the 78-79 Kingpin D60, and then we'll get to work. So the interface between the knuckle and the inner C on the 79 axle is a Kingpin, which is at the bottom it's a kind of a bearing, and then at the top it's kind of this cone-shaped bushing type thing, and they're known to be very strong. The newer D60 has ball joints. We all know what ball joints are. So the wheel lug pattern on the 79 is a 8 by 6.5 inches, whereas the new D60 axle is a 8 by 170 millimeter. So it's a metric bolt pattern. So the diameter of the axle tubes on the 79 is a 3 1/8, and it's 1/2 inch thick, whereas the newer D60 is 3 3/4 and also 1/2 inch thick. So the measurement from wheel mounting surface to wheel mounting surface on the 79 is 69 1/4 inch. The new axle, the new Super Duty axle, is 71 1/2 inches. U-joints, both these axles use the same size U-joints. They're 1480 style U-joint. The big difference is on the new Dana 60, you could fit a 1550 U-joint. So that's a good advantage, but they both come with the same size from the factory. Another thing is the axle splines. The inner axles on the 79 Ford are 35 spline, and the outer axles are 30 spline. The new Dana 60 has 35 inner and outer axles. So now that we covered some of the main specs, I just want to talk about some of the pros and cons of these axles. So we'll start with the pros. The main thing, I think one of the main things people really like about these axles are the stronger knuckles and inner Cs. The knuckles are a weak link on the older axles, so these knuckles don't really require any reinforcement. So I already mentioned the axle tube sizes earlier, so that's a pro. The axle tubes are stronger. So are the axles themselves, the axle shafts, because they are because the outer shafts are the weak link on the older axles, so these ones have 35 spline outers. You could also upgrade the U-joints very easily to a larger size, the 1550. Also, you could mount a larger ring gear in these axles. So the F450 and 550s came with a 10-inch ring gear, and those are bolt-in from what I understand. These axles are actually more affordable than the older ones. I picked this one up for $100, which is, I think, a little bit unheard of, but usually you get them from, I think, $300 to $500, whereas the older ones, the Kingpin axles, are about $800 to $1,200. These axles come with bigger brakes, so that's always better. When you have bigger tires, big heavy trucks, bigger brakes are always better. And the last thing I want to list here is the aftermarket support. So the older axles have really good support, but used to be a con that nobody really had any parts for these things, but now there's a ton of support for these newer axles, so that's listed as a pro. Okay, so now let's switch to cons. I'm going to list this as a con. I'm listing metric bolt pattern as a con because I already have a set of standard wheels, the typical 8 on 6.5, but I don't know if this is really a con anymore. I mean, I'm listing it as a con, but the Super Duty bolt pattern is becoming more and more popular. So I guess it depends what you have in your yard. If you already have a set of Super Duty wheels, this may be a pro to you, but It's just something to note anyway. There's a negative stigma around ball joints saying that they're weaker, but I guess they're a little bit stronger in these newer axles versus the 99 to 04 F250 and 350 D60. But people are also making ball joint eliminator kits if you're really concerned about it. So I'm gonna list this as a con. So due to the brake size, you need larger wheels to fit over the brakes. So I think you need at least a 17-inch to fit over these ones. So some of the old school guys that are running 15-inch wheels, and so those aren't going to fit because of the knuckle design. You can't. It's harder to do high steer. On the old kingpin axles, there's 4 bolts there. You just bolt on your high steer arms. These ones you usually have to drill and tap or do some welding, something like that. So it's a little harder to do, not impossible. The aftermarket's supporting it. Just want to list it here. And last but not least, and you're gonna watch this in the video coming up here, is there's a lot more stuff to remove off this housing. You gotta cut the casting and cut a lot more brackets off of it compared to the older axles. Now that we covered all that stuff, let's get to work. One of the downfalls to this axle is removing all the bracketry from this axle. At least that's what people don't like about it, but I don't really see it as a big deal. I guess it's a lot more work than when you have to remove spring perches on the old Dana 60s. That's like nothing compared to this work, but really not a big deal. I'll show you guys that. Way easier with the plasma cutter. And that's another grinding disc. Be prepared to go through a lot of these on this project. Not cutting it. So last night I ordered a 7-incher. It's not in yet. So instead of doing some grinding, because this is just going to take forever, I'm going to do some plasma cutting tonight, and then when the big grinder comes in, we'll finish this thing up. Hey guys, I'm back in the shop today. My 7-inch grinder came in. Check it out. Here are my 4-inch grinders and my new 7-inch grinder. I wish I would have bought that grinder way earlier. This is making it way easier, way faster. Alright guys, here it is all cleaned up. All the brackets are off on this side, and on this side the casting's all cleaned up. It's a little rough. I just did a quick grinding job. We'll clean it up real nice before we weld the truss on. Quick little note, if you're buying an Arctech truss, which is a pretty popular truss the guys are buying right now, you actually have to cut this part back 2 inches. So I think that's, around here somewhere. Anyway, so they cut this and then break this off, and then this weakens the casting a lot, but the truss ties into the tube, so it's not a big deal. Part of the reason they do that is because on this side you don't have enough room for a link mount. You don't really want to be welding to the cast here, so if you cut this back, then you have enough room to weld the link mount on, and then it's just welding to the tube. You just got to make sure when you do that that you truss your axle, because otherwise there's a lot of stress on the casting here with the leverage of this axle tube wanting to move up or whatever. So anyway, that's that. So yeah, here it is. Got all the brackets out in front of it. Anyway, that's everything that wasn't turned into grinding dust. Turns out it's a pretty big job to grind all this stuff off, but anyway, you get the idea. Another quick thing here, since I'm kind of talking about details. This is basically how you identify this axle real quick. This right here makes the 05, F250 and F350 D60 special, because usually you wouldn't see that. Here, I'll show you my Super Duty outside, which is a 99 to 04 axle. It doesn't have that. So here's a 2001 front axle. They're the same from 99 to 2004. The main way that you identify these, the difference is on top of the inner C, there's no mount. On the 05 and newer, that's where the coil bucket mounts, but because these trucks are leaf sprung, they have leaf spring mounts. So that's really how you're going to tell the difference between these two different axles. The F450 and 550 Dana 60s also don't have this because the axles are actually wider, so the coil buckets mount, so this is where the coil buckets mount. So the coil bucket mounts are actually on the axle tubes on those axles, but those are the Super 60s. They're a little harder to find, wider and whatnot, but anyway. So that's an easy way to identify this axle. I might still grind those off if I don't need them later, but I'm leaving it like this for now. Anyway. So that basically concludes the episode. Mostly just, I wanted to give you guys a bunch of information that I learned in the last few months or so figured I'd share with everyone.